Distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. On behalf of the ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office, thank you for the opportunity to participate in the inaugural Economy Week hosted by the Ministry of Finance and Economy and held under the auspices of the Brunei Mid-Year Conference and Exhibition. It is my privilege to speak on the topic of economic prospects for ASEAN, what lies ahead. So much has changed since the outbreak of the COVID-19. We are now living in a significantly different world, one where even our perception of reality is also changing. For example, virtual tourism and shopping is now part of the new normal, and the metaverse is on the verge of becoming reality. One thing is clear, the pandemic has accelerated some key global trends, some of which are transformational. For example, the acceleration of digital technology is a shift which is not only pervasive and deepening, but also has the potential to create a digital divide, causing much anxiety. Other trends such as protectionism and widening inequality are polarizing, while still others, such as climate change, decarbonization, and green technology, has the potential to bring us together. These trends will have lasting implications globally, including for ASEAN economies. As a consequence, the pursuit of a dynamic, sustained, and inclusive economic expansion has become even more challenging, albeit fraught with risk and shrouded by greater uncertainties. The theme of this year's Economic Week, Towards a Dynamic and Sustainable Economy, aptly captures the essence of the current debate. Let me share with you some thoughts on the near-term economic prospects for ASEAN, the challenges ahead, and the key emerging trends in the longer run that will shape the overall macroeconomic future. First, the COVID-19 pandemic. After more than 2 years, it appears that the region may have finally gained the upper ground in long battle against COVID-19 virus. Thanks to the growing vaccine availability, improved therapies, testing and tracing, daily new cases have declined sharply, and the highly infectious Delta and Omicron waves have subsided across the region, as you can see from the chart. The region's high vaccination rates have also provided effective protection against severe illness, hospitalizations, and death. This has enabled the easing of containment measures, including the lifting of cross-border restrictions and the resumption of economic activities. ASEAN can therefore look forward to a stronger economic recovery this year as COVID-19 becomes endemic. However, just when we are gradually emerging from the health crisis, we have been hit by another shock, this time from geopolitics. This brings me to my second point, the war in Ukraine. The onset of the war in Ukraine has added new uncertainties, shrouding the regional outlook. As Russia and Ukraine are major suppliers of oil and gas, wheat, fertilizers, and sunflower oil, the impact of the war is being felt across the world, mainly through higher prices for energy and major agricultural produce, which has surged to historic highs. The war has also exacerbated the pandemic-induced supply chain disruptions, as subsequent sanctions and airspace and shipping lane closures have further stretched global supply chains. What does this mean for ASEAN economies? Certainly, price and cost pressures are building, with upside risks for the outlook on inflation. As ASEAN economies are mostly net oil and gas importers, the increase in global energy prices is an adverse terms of trade shock that is expected to raise import prices, driving up inflation. Food prices in the region would see sharp increases as well. Agricultural commodity exports from Russia and Ukraine, such as sunflower oil, are curtailed, spilling into prices of regionally produced commodities such as palm oil, which is a substitute. Higher input production costs from rising fertilizers and feedstock will also feed through into higher food prices throughout this year and into the next. As the war in Ukraine and sanctions on Russia are likely to continue or remain in force for some time, we can expect supply disruptions to persist and commodity prices and world inflation to stay high. In the last few months, the US Treasury yield curve has risen sharply as sustained and higher US inflation has amplified market expectation of a sharper and more front-loaded policy tightening. This is also reflected in the strength of the US dollar. The more aggressive than expected move by the Fed in recent weeks to rein in inflationary pressures has triggered a sharp repricing of risk assets, fueling financial market volatility and capital outflows from emerging markets. We have seen sharper global market sell-offs following the Fed's decision to raise interest rate by 50 basis points last month and 75 basis points 2 weeks ago, as fears of higher borrowing costs and a sharp slowdown in the US economy roiled markets. The Fed has also commenced quantitative tightening at a much faster pace as compared to the previous cycle in 2017. Expectations of tighter global financial conditions has spilled over to the region, reflected in higher interest rates in emerging ASEAN economies and putting pressure on regional central banks to tighten monetary policy at a faster pace than planned. Fourth, the outlook for ASEAN economies. Let me now share AMRO's baseline growth and inflation projections for 2022 and 2023 for ASEAN economies. Notwithstanding the strong external headwinds, we expect growth in ASEAN to remain robust, as you can see from the table. Estimated at 5.1% this year and 5.2% next year. The higher growth will be driven by stronger domestic demand, reflecting the lifting of restrictions and the strong recovery in travel and tourism. Inflation is expected to be higher at 4.1%, due mainly to rising commodity prices and the concurrent firming of domestic demand in most economies, before easing to its long-term trend in 2023. By the way, we are in the process of reviewing our growth and inflation forecast, and the new forecast will be published next week. Despite the strong overall growth forecast, the recovery remains uneven and multi-speed across the region. For tourism-dependent economies such as Thailand and Cambodia, and contact-intensive industries such as retail and hospitality, they were hit hard by the pandemic. Full recovery will take some time, as aviation and tourism are not expected to recover fully until next year. Against this background, policies in the region, by and large, should continue to be focused on alleviating the impact of the pandemic on hard-hit sectors and supporting a sustained and inclusive recovery. Given multiple global and regional headwinds and difficult policy trade-offs, policymakers should deploy a whole suite of tools: monetary, fiscal, macroprudential, and capital flows management measures to achieve the multiple objectives. Ultimately, the policy mix needs to be tailored to members' pandemic situation, the strength of the recovery, and policy space considerations. Now, finally, let me turn to some key trends that are shaping the longer-term outlook for ASEAN. As I mentioned at the start, the pandemic has accelerated some transformational global trends. One such trend is the proliferation of digital technology, which has seen tremendous growth during the pandemic. Digitally supplied services, including e-commerce, digital financial services, telehealth, and modern services have thrived, and will continue to have a strong potential as future growth drivers in ASEAN. It is encouraging that Brunei has embraced digital technology as the country aspires to become a smart nation, digitally driven by digital government, digital technology, and digital society as stipulated in the 2025 Digital Economy Master Plan, as you can see from the chart. Thanks to the government's concerted efforts, many digital services have been deployed throughout the country, including fintech, digital payment, and e-commerce platforms. The latter have been booming, especially since the onset of the pandemic. The disruption to supply chains due to the pandemic has highlighted the fragility of long and complex supply chains. With a few concentrated sources of supplies for some key products, such as medical equipment, it has led to renewed interest in and calls for reshoring, nearshoring, and the regionalization of supply and production networks. Today, MNCs are seeking to build global supply chains that are not just efficient and cost-effective, but also more resilient. And ASEAN is well positioned to benefit, given its diversity of factor endowments, its location in a fast-growing region, and a well-developed manufacturing ecosystem, including forward and backward linkages with local SMEs. Closer intra-regional cooperation in areas of supply chain security, interconnectivity, cross-border flows, and digital integration will be crucial to further expand ASEAN's opportunity to achieve shared prosperity. The launch of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, at the start of 2022 comes at an opportune moment for the region as it seeks to boost post-pandemic growth and strengthen regional supply chains. Through RCEP, Brunei, as a small and open economy, has the potential to integrate its enterprises, many of which are small, micro, or medium in size, into the regional supply chains. The enterprises are no longer restricted by the size of the domestic market, as they can now plug into the regional supply chains with duty-free access to all 15 RCEP member economies. This would widen the enterprises' market access, allowing them to become more competitive with greater economy of scale. To seize such opportunities, Brunei has been stepping up efforts to diversify the economy into other key industries set in the Wawasan Brunei 2035, such as downstream oil and gas, food, tourism, services, and ICT. Brunei's economic blueprint, introduced in January 2021, reflects the country's strong commitment in accelerating economic diversification and achieving a dynamic and sustainable recovery. Brunei has also been updating its relevant infrastructure to be well aligned with the standards of other RCEP members. The Brunei Darussalam National Single Window, for instance, has been established as the one-stop portal to facilitate cross-border trade. In summary, we are living in challenging times, full of risks and opportunities, shaped by forces that are beyond the control of individual countries. But together, we are in a stronger position to mitigate the risks and take advantage of the opportunities. I believe that through firm commitment, partnership, and close cooperation among ASEAN nations, the region's longer-term vision for shared prosperity can be achieved. Once again, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I wish you a successful conference. Thank you.